The forest was a place of whispers. Every leaf, every shadow, seemed to hold a story, some of sorrow, some of warning. Ilara moved through it with careful steps, her cloak brushing the fallen leaves, her eyes sharp and alert. She had traveled far, guided by rumors that led her to the edge of a forsaken settlement. There, hidden among twisted trees and creeping mist, a secret waited, though she did not yet know what it was. She had heard whispers of a man strong, proud, abandoned by his own people. Some said he was dead. Others claimed he had vanished into the forest. Curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, had drawn Ilara forward. She had always felt a pull toward the broken, the lost, the things the world wanted to forget. It was in a clearing that she found him. Kael lay half-hidden beneath fallen branches, his clothes torn and his body bruised. His dark hair clung to his forehead, matted with blood and sweat. Next to him were two infants, swaddled in ragged cloth, their tiny faces peaceful despite the danger around them. The sight made Ilara pause, a knot tightening in her chest. Here was a man left to die, yet guarding life even in his weakness. Kael stirred, a groan escaping his lips. His eyes, sharp and wary even in pain, met hers. They were eyes that had seen betrayal, battle, and loss, yet they held a glimmer of something unbroken. A fire that refused to die. "Who are you?" he rasped, his voice rough but commanding. I am Ilara," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "You're hurt. You need help." He shook his head, coughing. "No one helps a king who is already dead." Ilara frowned. There was something in his words, a weight beyond his injuries, something that whispered of power and loss intertwined. But she could not leave him here, not with the children at his side. "I don't care who you are," she said firmly. "I won't leave you like this." Kael's gaze softened slightly, though suspicion remained. He had trusted once and been betrayed. Trust came at a price he was not willing to pay again. Still, weakness was not an easy companion, and survival had its own rules. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he allowed her to lift him, to cradle him gently, to tend to his wounds with water and cloth. As she worked, Ilara's eyes traveled over him. His muscles were strong, even under bruises, and there was a grace in the way he moved. Restrained, but powerful. But it was the faint markings on his skin that caught her attention, strange symbols, dark as if etched by magic or curse, fading into his pale flesh. She had read of such things in old stories. Marks of kings, marks of hunters, marks of those chosen or cursed by fate. "You are not just a man," she said quietly, almost to herself. Kael's lips twitched, a hint of humor in his grim expression. "And you are not just curious," he replied. "You see more than most. Be careful. Some truths are dangerous." Ilara ignored the warning, focusing instead on the infants. Their small hands clutched at the air, their soft cries breaking the quiet of the forest. Her heart clenched. Whoever had left them here had shown no mercy. She wrapped them closer, feeling the warmth of life against the cold, wounded man she now supported. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the soft cries of the children and Kael's occasional groans. Ilara tended to him as best she could, using herbs she had carried, cleaning his wounds, and whispering reassurances that she hoped he could hear. Kael, for his part, was quiet. He studied her in those moments, her hands gentle, her eyes unwavering, the determination in her stance. It was rare to find someone unafraid of the shadow that clung to him, someone who did not flinch at the sight of a broken king. And yet, he did not speak of who he truly was, of the throne he had lost, of the enemies who had cast him out. That story was his alone, and he was not ready to share it. Night fell, and with it came a cold that seeped into the bones. Elara built a small fire, wrapping Kael and the twins in blankets she had carried. She tried to offer him warmth, to offer comfort, but he turned slightly away, stubborn even in exhaustion. "You don't have to trust me," she said, her voice low and steady. "But you must rest, or you will not survive the night." Kael's eyes softened, shadows of pride giving way to something more fragile. "Rest is dangerous for men like me," he murmured. "If they find me here—" His voice trailed off, the weight of unsaid words hanging heavy in the air. Elara did not press him. She simply watched over him, feeling the tension in his body slowly ease as he drifted toward sleep. The twins nestled against him, their tiny breaths a rhythm that reminded her of hope amidst despair. As the fire crackled, she let herself wonder. Who was this man? So proud and strong, yet so broken. What had made the world turn against him? And why did the sight of him wounded and alone stir something deep within her? Something that was neither fear nor pity, but longing. Hours later, in the dead of night, Kael stirred again. His eyes opened, and for a moment, they seemed to glow in the firelight, sharp, piercing, aware. "They think I am dead," he whispered, voice tight with anger and pain. "If they knew I still live, everything would burn." Elara froze. There was a warning there, a threat that trembled on the edge of his words. But there was also something else, an invitation, fragile and dangerous, to step closer to the truth. She could feel it in the air, heavy with the scent of rain and smoke, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Kael's gaze met hers, unwavering. He was a storm contained, a king fallen yet unbowed, and she was caught in the eye of it. "I don't understand," she said softly. "But I know this, I won't leave you. Not like this." He said nothing more. But for the first time, the firelight seemed to settle around him, not as a guard against danger, but as a shield against the world. And in that silence, Elara realized that what lay before her was not merely a man in need of help, it was a story waiting to be told. A destiny that had been abandoned, waiting for the hands brave enough to take it back. Outside the clearing, the forest stirred. Somewhere in the distance, a branch snapped. A shadow moved, and Kael's eyes narrowed, a flicker of his former power returning. "They are coming," he whispered, more to himself than to her. Elara's heart tightened. She glanced at the twins, sleeping peacefully despite the danger, and then back at him. The man she had found abandoned and broken, this Alpha King, unknown to the world, was alive. And for reasons she did not yet understand, he was theirs to protect. The fire crackled between them, small and fragile, yet defiant. And in that light, amidst the shadows and whispers of the cursed forest, Elara made a silent vow. She would not let him fall again. Not if she could help it. The night deepened, the wind carried secrets, and the forest seemed to lean closer, listening. In the heart of it, a fallen king lay in waiting, and the woman who had found him would soon learn that some truths were heavier than life itself. And somewhere in the dark, beyond the trees, enemies stirred. The game of power, of betrayal, and of survival was only beginning. Dawn crept slowly into the forest, spilling pale light over the frost-covered leaves. Mist clung to the trees like whispers, hiding shapes and movements, as if the forest itself watched over the fallen clearing. Elara stirred first, careful not to wake Kael, and glanced at the twins. Their small faces, peaceful and trusting, made her chest tighten. They were fragile, yet they carried a spark of life that demanded protection. Kael was awake now, too, eyes partially open, scanning the forest with a mix of caution and command. He seemed smaller in the gentle morning light, the bruises and exhaustion etched deeply into his face. Yet there was still a fire in his gaze, one that no injury could fully hide. "You stayed," he said finally. voice low and rough from sleep. Elara nodded, offering a small smile. Of course. You can't survive alone. Not with them. Kale's eyes softened momentarily, almost imperceptibly. I am not used to help. Not from anyone. And yet, his voice trailed off, the unfinished thought hanging like smoke. I don't care what you are used to, Elara said, keeping her tone firm but gentle. They need you, and you need them, and right now, you need someone who will not abandon you. He studied her. The weight of his past reflected in his dark eyes. Something about her was different. Her determination, her warmth, the way she looked at him not with fear or awe, but with steady resolve. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt a flicker of something he had not allowed himself. Hope. The twins stirred, tiny cries pulling him from his thoughts. Kale's hands, calloused and strong, reached for them instinctively. He held them close, murmuring soft words, his pride and vulnerability intertwined. Elara watched quietly, realizing that this man, so powerful and feared by the world, was human in the most profound way. Hours passed in quiet preparation. Elara moved like a guardian, checking for water, making sure the fire stayed small, and keeping the twins safe. Kale remained still for much of the time, conserving his strength, but she noticed his eyes constantly scanning the edges of the clearing. He was alert, wary of danger, yet silent in his judgment of her. Finally, he spoke, voice low, almost a whisper. Why are you here? You could leave. No one would blame you for walking away. Elara met his gaze without flinching. Because someone has to be here. Someone has to care. And because I don't like seeing the innocent suffer. Kale's lips curved slightly, a hint of a smile he quickly suppressed. You are brave, he said simply. Or foolish. Perhaps both. You might be both too, she replied, teasing lightly, though her heart felt heavy with concern. For the first time, Kale allowed himself to speak more freely, though he carefully chose his words. I was not always like this, he said. I was a king once, the alpha king of a kingdom that trusted me. But betrayal is a sharp blade. My closest allies turned against me. They cast me out, leaving me to die in the forest. My throne, my people, lost. Elara listened, every word pulling her closer to the man she barely knew but already respected. And the twins? She asked softly, as if afraid to speak too loudly. They are my blood, Kale said, his voice rough with emotion. The only part of me they cannot take. If I survive. His hands tightened around them instinctively, as though their safety depended solely on his grip. The forest remained silent around them, the mist thickening as if holding its breath. Elara noticed the faint symbols etched along his arms and chest again. These marks, she asked cautiously. What are they? Kale's eyes darkened. Remnants of a curse, he admitted. A warning from those who betrayed me. They thought it would weaken me, but it did not break me entirely. Elara shivered slightly at the revelation. The power that Kale had once wielded and still possessed was not just physical. It was ancient, dangerous, and capable of drawing both loyalty and fear. And yet, here he was, laying vulnerable before her, guarding his children with every ounce of his remaining strength. I want to help, she said softly. If you let me, I will help you survive, and I will help them. Kale looked at her with a mixture of suspicion and awe. You are unlike anyone I have met, he said. No one has ever stayed when they should have fled. Elara smiled faintly, though her heart was heavy. Perhaps I am stubborn, she replied. Or perhaps I see what you do not. You are not just a fallen king. You are still powerful, still important. And I believe in you. even if no one else does. The words seemed to reach something deep inside Kael. A part of him he had long abandoned faith in the possibility of trust, and even love. Yet he could not allow himself to be carried away. The outside world was cruel, and his enemies were relentless. "Stay alert," he warned, his voice suddenly sharp. "They know I live, and they will come for me. For the children, you must be ready." Elara nodded, feeling a chill of fear run through her. "Then we prepare," she said firmly. Together. The morning passed with cautious movement. Elara gathered herbs and small provisions, while Kael showed her how to camouflage their clearing and hide their tracks. Despite his weakness, his strength was undeniable, and his presence carried authority that even the forest seemed to respect. Every movement was precise, calculated, and protective, revealing a side of him that was both commanding and tender. By afternoon, a strange bond had formed. They spoke little of trivial matters. Instead, their words carried weight and meaning, filled with understanding and silent trust. Elara began to see the man behind the legend. A king betrayed, a father devoted, a warrior tempered by pain and survival. And Kael, for the first time, allowed himself to acknowledge the comfort of having someone who did not fear him, someone willing to share his burden. As dusk approached, a subtle unease crept over the clearing. The forest grew darker, the mist heavier, and the sounds of distant movement reached their ears. Kael's gaze sharpened, his instincts screaming danger. "They are close," he whispered, almost to himself. "I can feel them. They have found the trail." Elara's heart raced. "What will we do?" she asked, tension lacing her voice. Kael stood slowly. The twins safe in his arms, every movement precise despite his injuries. "We survive. We fight if we must. And we protect what is ours." Elara nodded, though fear threatened to rise. She glanced at him, seeing not just the man before her, but the king, the protector, the storm that had once ruled a kingdom. And she realized that to protect him, to stand by him, she would have to confront dangers she had never faced before. Night fell fully, and shadows stretched long across the forest floor. The clearing, once a place of fragile safety, now seemed exposed, vulnerable. Every rustle, every snap of a branch, sent a ripple of tension through them. Elara clutched the twins closer, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Kael, for his part, remained calm, though every muscle in his body was tense. "They will not take them," he said, voice low and firm. "Not while I breathe." Elara met his gaze, feeling the truth in his words. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a fight for redemption, for reclaiming what had been stolen, for proving that even a fallen king could rise again. And then, from the darkness beyond the clearing, a sound shattered the fragile peace. A branch snapped under a heavy footfall. Kael's eyes narrowed. His body coiled like a spring. "They have found us," he said, voice steady but edged with danger. "Prepare yourself. Tonight, we either survive together, or—" He let the words hang in the air, unfinished, but filled with unspoken threat. Elara's pulse quickened. She glanced at the twins, then back at him. The man she had found, broken and alone. The Alpha King, unknown to the world, was readying for the storm, and she would stand with him, no matter what came. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the mist swirling like ghosts around them. Somewhere in the distance, shadowed figures moved, their intent clear. The game of survival had begun, and the fallen king and the woman who had found him were no longer merely hiding. They were ready to fight, to protect, and perhaps to find something neither had expected: trust, and maybe even love. The forest was alive with tension. Every rustle of leaves, Every creak of branches seemed amplified in the heavy night air. Mist curled through the trees, hiding shapes that moved closer, their intent unmistakable. Ilara tightened her grip on the twins, feeling the weight of their small bodies against her chest. Her heart pounded, but she did not let fear show. Kale stood a few steps ahead, his posture rigid, every muscle coiled with readiness. Despite the bruises and exhaustion that marred his body, he exuded power, the kind that demanded attention even in the dark. His eyes scanned the forest with a predator's focus, flickering between shadows as he whispered under his breath, "They are close. Too close." Ilara moved silently behind him, keeping the twins safe. She had never been in a situation like this before, yet she found a strange calm in the presence of Kale. Even broken, he radiated authority and strength, a force that seemed to draw her closer, even as danger loomed. A sudden snap of a branch made her freeze. Kale's eyes flicked to the sound, and in an instant, he moved like water, graceful, fast, and precise. His hand gestured for her to stay behind. The figures stepped into the moonlight, cloaked in dark garments, faces hidden by hoods. They carried weapons, but their movements lacked the mastery Kale held. "They come for the king," Kale said quietly, "and they will not leave until we are dead or taken." Ilara's chest tightened. "Then we fight," she said firmly, though her voice betrayed the tremor of fear. Kale glanced at her, and for the first time, a small, approving smile appeared. "Yes," he said, "we fight, but carefully. Protect the children, or everything is lost." The first wave moved forward, stepping cautiously through the mist. Kale's eyes narrowed, and he exhaled slowly, summoning a strength that seemed almost unnatural. Shadows clung to him, bending and shifting as if the forest itself answered his command. His presence became a shield, a warning that this was no ordinary man, no ordinary fight. Ilara watched in awe as Kale moved among the attackers. Every step was precise, every movement calculated. He disarmed and evaded, using his knowledge and instincts to keep the twins safe while neutralizing threats. The forest seemed to bend around him, and she realized the legends of the Alpha King had been true. Yet despite his skill, Kyle was still wounded. A blade nicked his arm, drawing blood, and he hissed in pain. Ilara's heart lurched, but he refused to falter. With one swift motion, he pushed back, sending his attackers sprawling into the underbrush. The clash was brief but fierce. A dance of shadows and steel, and then quiet returned briefly, tense and uneasy. Kyle turned toward her, sweat and blood streaking his face. "They are stronger than I thought," he admitted, his voice low. "This is not over." Ilara nodded, keeping the twins close. "Then we hold them off. We survive. Together." For a moment, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a connection born of shared danger and unspoken understanding. Kale's defenses, forged over years of betrayal, softened slightly. He had never trusted so quickly. Yet here was a woman who had chosen to stay, who had chosen to see him as he truly was. Not only a king, but a man with a past, a heart, and a future worth fighting for. Hours passed in tense preparation. Ilara and Kale moved silently through the forest, creating traps, finding hidden paths, and keeping the twins safe. Every shadow could hold danger. Every sound could signal an attack. And yet, through the fear and the adrenaline, they began to rely on each other in ways neither had expected. Ilara's courage inspired Kale, while his strength reassured her. At one point, Kale stopped, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "They are testing us," he said quietly. "They want to see our weakness, to find where we will falter." Ilara swallowed hard. "Then, we show them strength, and we protect what matters most." He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment, The mask of the Alpha King slipped. She saw the exhaustion, the pain, the guilt, and the deep love he bore for his children. "You are brave," he said softly, almost a whisper. "Not many would stay." Ilara smiled faintly. "I did not come for bravery. I came because it was right. And because I see you, Kale, the man beneath the crown and the curse." A tense silence fell between them, broken only by the soft cries of the twins. Kale's gaze softened, and for a moment, he allowed himself to feel something dangerous hope. And then the sound came, a distant shout, a call that split the forest like a knife. "They are here," Kale muttered, moving swiftly to a hidden ridge. From this vantage, he could see figures advancing, dozens of them, dark shapes moving with purpose. "They will not leave without a fight," he said. Ilara gripped the twins tighter. "Then we fight," she said, her voice steady, despite the fear rising in her chest. The attackers came in waves, testing their defenses, probing for weakness. Kale met them with precision and power, his movements fluid, almost supernatural. He protected the children at every turn, his eyes always returning to Ilara to ensure she and the twins were safe. But even with his skill, Kale was not invincible. A blow struck him, knocking him to one knee, and Ilara feared the worst. Without thinking, she stepped forward, confronting an attacker who had crept close to them. Her movements were clumsy but determined, and she managed to push the figure back, buying Kale precious seconds to recover. Their fight continued, fierce and desperate, until finally, the attackers retreated, unable to breach the defenses Kale had built around them. The forest fell silent once more, the mist curling like smoke from a battle just fought. Kale sank to the ground, exhausted but unbroken. Ilara knelt beside him, brushing blood-streaked hair from his face. "Are you hurt badly?" she asked, concern etched into her features. "More than I like," he admitted, his voice hoarse. "But I am alive. And so are we all. That is what matters." She smiled faintly, feeling a mixture of relief and admiration. "We survived," she said softly. "Together." Kale's eyes softened as he looked at her. "Yes," he whispered. "Together." They stayed like that for a long moment, surrounded by the quiet forest, the twins sleeping safely between them. And in that quiet, fragile peace, something shifted, a bond forged not only by necessity, but by trust, courage, and something deeper, something dangerous. A connection neither could fully name, but both felt. Night deepened, and the fire they had built flickered in the darkness. Kale tended to the twins once more, murmuring soft words that made Ilara's heart ache with admiration. He was fierce, unyielding, and yet capable of tenderness in ways few could imagine. Ilara's gaze lingered on him. She could see the man beneath the legend, the father beneath the warrior, the king beneath the fallen crown. And she knew, without doubt, that her place was here, with him, protecting what was theirs. But even as she felt the warmth of that connection, a shadow fell over the clearing. From the edge of the forest, a figure stepped into the firelight. Kale's eyes narrowed instantly, every muscle tensing. The figure was alone, but its presence carried authority, power, and the unmistakable intent of someone who knew who Kale truly was. "They have sent a messenger," Kale whispered, voice low but steady. "Someone to remind us that the past is not done with us yet." Ilara's breath caught. "What do they want?" Kale did not answer immediately. He studied the figure, his mind calculating every possibility, every danger. Finally, he said, "They want me to surrender, to give up the children, to leave the throne behind, and they do not take no for an answer." Ilara's hand found his, gripping it tightly. "Then we don't give it to them," she said firmly. "We fight, we survive, and we protect them." Kale looked at her, a mixture of awe and gratitude in his eyes. "You are unlike anyone I have met," he said softly. "You fight not for power, not for glory, but for what is right. And I will not forget this." The messenger stepped closer, a shadowed figure moving silently, yet every motion screamed control and danger. Kale rose, the twins safe in his arms, his presence a living storm. "Then let them come," he said, voice low but powerful. "We will not fall tonight. Not while I breathe. Not while we breathe." The forest seemed to hold its breath, mist swirling like ghosts around the clearing. Ilara tightened her hold on the twins, ready for what was coming. Kale's eyes never left the messenger, every sense alert, every movement coiled like a spring. And then, from the shadows, a whisper carried across the clearing. A voice cold and unyielding, yet filled with purpose. "Alpha King, your time has not ended, but neither has your trial." Ilara's heart raced. Kale's jaw tightened, eyes flashing. The storm was not over. Not even close. The first light of dawn seeped into the forest, burning away the mist in golden ribbons that touched the frost-covered leaves. The clearing where Kael, Ilara, and the twins had fought for survival now seemed almost peaceful. Yet the tension in the air remained, heavy as the weight of a kingdom long lost. The messenger had vanished as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving a lingering sense of warning. And Kale's eyes never left the shadows beyond the tree line. Ilara knelt beside him, brushing dirt from his shoulders. "We made it through the night," she said softly, though she knew their trials were far from over. Kale's gaze was distant, fixed on some horizon only he could see. "We survived the night," he repeated quietly. "But survival is not enough. The kingdom waits. And my enemies still linger." The twins stirred in their blankets, small hands reaching for Kale instinctively. He held them close, feeling the weight of responsibility heavier than any sword or crown. Yet, in their soft breathing, he found something stronger than fear, hope. The future was fragile, yes, but it was theirs to shape. Ilara rose, determination in her eyes. "Then, we reclaim it," she said. "We take back what was stolen. Together." Kael turned to her, studying her face. There was courage there, unwavering and bright, and something more, a warmth he had not felt in years. Something that spoke of trust, loyalty, and perhaps even love. "Together," he said, voice steady. The day was spent in preparation. They moved through the forest carefully, scouting paths and safe passages, avoiding the remnants of the enemy forces that still lingered near the edges. Kale revealed to Ilara fragments of his past, how betrayal had shattered his court, how his closest allies had turned on him for power, and how the curse marked his flesh as a warning. Ilara listened, never judging, never faltering. "You are still a king," she said softly. "Not because of a crown or a throne, but because of who you are. And the world will remember that, if we survive to show them." Kale allowed himself a faint smile, rare and fragile. "It has been so long since anyone believed in me," he murmured. "You believe in me." "I do," she said simply. "And so do they," she added, glancing at the twins. As the sun rose higher, they reached the outskirts of the ruined city. Kale's kingdom, long abandoned, overgrown, and silent. Crumbling walls and shattered statues spoke of glory lost, but the power in the air was palpable. The land itself seemed to recognize him, bending subtly to his presence. The shadows moving in response to the Alpha King's return. Kale's eyes swept across the city, a storm of determination rising within him. "This was once mine," he said, voice low but firm, "and it will be mine again." Ilara stepped beside him. "And it will be ours," she said. Her hand brushed his, a silent promise of partnership, loyalty, and shared fate. Their approach did not go unnoticed. From the ruins, figures began to emerge, those who had survived the betrayal, those who had remained loyal, and even those who had once turned against him, but now hesitated in the face of his return. Kale's presence commanded attention. It drew respect and fear, loyalty and awe. A hush fell over the gathered crowd. Kale stepped forward, carrying the twins in his arms. His voice rang out, clear and strong, echoing through the ruined city. I am Kale, the Alpha King, and though I was cast aside, I am not broken. I have returned to reclaim what is mine, and protect what is ours. The crowd murmured, some with hesitation, some with awe. Then, slowly, those loyal to him stepped forward, kneeling in respect and acknowledgement. One by one, the city recognized him not as a fallen king, but as a leader tempered by trials, unbowed by betrayal, and stronger for the pain he had endured. Elara watched silently, pride swelling in her chest. She had seen the broken man in the forest, the wounded king struggling to protect his children. And now she saw the ruler rising from the shadows. He had fought for survival, and now he fought for redemption, not only for himself, but for the kingdom, the people, and the family he had begun to reclaim. But the day was not yet won. From the shadows beyond the city walls, the remnants of his enemies gathered, unwilling to accept Kale's return. They moved with intent, and Kale's eyes narrowed. They think they can challenge me again, he said, voice low, dangerous, but they underestimate what it means to rise from the ashes. Elara stayed close, watching as Kale prepared for confrontation. Though he was tired, the fire in his eyes burned brighter than ever. He positioned the loyalists, organized defenses, and silently communicated strategies with a precision born of leadership and experience. Every motion was deliberate, every decision weighed carefully, yet his thoughts were never far from the twins, the heart of his renewed strength. As the first attackers approached, Kale moved like a storm unleashed. Shadows twisted at his command, creating barriers that forced the enemies to hesitate. He struck with precision, disarming and disabling without unnecessary cruelty, his movements a mixture of grace and power. Elara followed closely, assisting where she could, her courage unwavering even in the face of danger. The battle was swift but intense. Kale's enemies had strength in numbers, but they lacked the unity, precision, and determination he, now, wielded. One by one, they faltered, their resolve breaking in the presence of a king reborn. And when the last of them fled, leaving the city in quiet, Kale exhaled, the weight of victory heavy yet sweet. Elara knelt beside him once more, the twins sleeping peacefully in their arms. It's over, she whispered. Kale shook his head slightly, exhaustion mingling with relief. It is never truly over, he said softly. There will always be challenges. But today, we have reclaimed what was stolen. Today, we rise again. He placed the twins gently in Elara's arms, his hands brushing her face with a tenderness that made her heart ache. You stayed, he said quietly. You stayed when no one else would. And for that, I am grateful. More than words can say. Elara smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. I stayed because I believed in you, she said. And because I knew someone like you cannot remain lost forever. Kale's eyes softened, vulnerability and strength mingling in their depths. He reached for her hand, and she allowed him to hold it, a silent acknowledgement of shared fate, trust, and growing affection. Together, he whispered. Yes, she replied. Together. The twins stirred again, tiny hands reaching toward Kale. He lifted them gently, holding them close, and Elara felt a surge of hope. In this moment, the broken king, The courageous woman and the innocent children formed a new family, not bound by blood alone, but by trust, loyalty, and love, earned through trial and fire. The sun rose fully, golden light spilling across the city ruins, painting them in warmth and possibility. Kael and Alara stood together, watching as loyalists began to repair, rebuild, and reclaim the kingdom. Shadows of the past still lingered, but they no longer held power over him. He had faced betrayal, survived danger, and embraced responsibility. And he had found someone willing to stand beside him, unafraid of his strength or his scars. Ilara leaned close, her voice soft. Kael looked at her, the weight of years of loss and pain evident in his expression, but also a newfound serenity. "And I am not afraid," he replied. "Not when you are here. Not when we face this together." The forest beyond the city seemed to sigh, as if recognizing the shift. A kingdom reclaimed, a king reborn, and a bond forged in fire and shadow. The past had tested them, but it could not define them. They were stronger, wiser, and united. Kael lifted his eyes to the horizon, the wind carrying a whisper of promise and warning. "We survived the darkness," he murmured. "But the world still has shadows that hunger for power." Ilara tightened her grip on the twins, standing beside him. "Then we will face them," she said. "Together." And for the first time in a long while, Kael allowed himself to feel hope, not fleeting, not fragile, but enduring. He had been abandoned, left to die, and betrayed. But now, he stood with Ilara, with his children, with loyal allies by his side. The Alpha King had returned, not only to reclaim his throne but to embrace a life shaped by courage, love, and redemption. The sun climbed higher, casting light over the ruins, painting the shadows gold. The battle was won, but the journey continued. Yet Kael knew that with Ilara at his side, with the twins in his arms, and with the strength that had carried him through darkness, he could face whatever the future held. And in that quiet, golden dawn, the fallen king smiled, not with pride, but with the certainty that he had survived. He had loved, and he had risen.